There was once a young human who believed that if they were able to acquire great wealth, if they were able to ascend to a very high position in the world, that all would be good, that all of their needs would be taken care of, that they would feel some sort of wholeness that their soul desired. And yet, countless mythological stories have started in this way, and they tend to always end in the same thing, which is the money, the status, the quote success does not actually equal true fulfillment. Hey friends, welcome to episode whatever it might be, because I can't be bothered to go look right this moment, and it doesn't really actually matter. What really matters is you're listening to the Out of Step podcast. This is the podcast for those of you who live in this ecosystem of supporting other humans, but you do it on the edges. You do it a little bit punk rock, a little bit out of the mainstream. And I'm so stoked because this is one of my favorite topics that we're about to address with my friend Ambrosia. And I can't think of a better person to have this particular conversation with because, to be honest, I don't actually remember where I first met Ambrosia or even what our first introduction was. But from the time that I can remember us having our first conversations, this has been a common thread. We have talked about this struggle of personal, quote, success, especially like the financial and professional version of success, versus the sense of just personal fulfillment and wholeness. And so I was really pumped when this is what arrived naturally during our conversation together. Besides just being a really magnetic and curious and wise human being, Ambrosia does have 27 years within the beauty industry, still as a hairdresser. Yep, she still does a little bit of hair. But mostly as an entrepreneur, an educator, and a really talented podcast host. And she's been helping to build businesses, consult founders and brands. She has helped a lot of people navigate the aspects of growth and leadership, marketing, money, and long-term sustainability within their business. And what I think is really cool is to see how that has evolved into even more focus in the areas of creativity, personal growth. And that's the part that we get to dive in deeper with. And as we're going to hear, she's even putting all of this into a new book, which I'm pretty sure is going to be badass. So please join me. Let's jump into a really wonderful conversation with my friend, Ambrosia Carey. All right, Ambrosia, I'm so excited to have you. We always have such killer conversations, so we can drop in together and drop in with the audience who's listening. Give us one or two words for how you are today, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me. It's so great to catch up with you, see you, chat with you. Where I am today, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is that what you're asking?
Those are the four. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Mentally, I am doing gymnastics in my brain on how I can juggle all the many things that I've committed myself to, and also trying to make space for the things that I am still yet to discover. So there's a lot going on in my brain. We were chatting a little bit about it before we started recording it. Physically, I am probably the healthiest I've been in a long time. I am getting more sleep than I used to. I was someone who would pride myself in saying oh, I can go on 4 hours of sleep and I'm so good. And that was not healthy. So I actually realized oh my gosh, I'm so much more effective in the morning, and I'm sharper. So yeah, mentally I feel really good about that. Or I guess that's more of a mental thing. Physical, same thing, sleeping. I'm, starting to get back into my yoga practices again. Just doing more meditation. I do grounding exercises in the afternoon. It's like one of my favorite things to do with my husband. We go to the park and we do a grounding exercise with our dog, Pepper. And then spiritually, I guess that kind of goes in the next thing. I've been reading a lot of books on spirituality. My husband and I both are trying to walk the walk more than talk the talk. We really want to challenge ourselves to truly see things that might come up for us. Like maybe if there's a point of contention where he might say something that gets under my skin, and instead of me saying something, then I try to notice that it's bringing something up for me. And where is that actually coming from? It's not about what he said or even how he said it. It's something about me and my need to possibly control or have that fit within what I'm comfortable with. So it's been interesting, but it's been, I think it's brought us closer than we've ever been. I feel more level-headed, and I also feel like this avalanche of things that I have surrounded myself by, I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is the point of any of this shit?
Yeah, that's kind of the dangerous part of diving down the spiritual rabbit hole, is definitely causes us to do a lot of questioning.
I know. I'm just like, should I have just like, do I need to stuff myself back in it again? I feel like in some ways, and in the end of all this process unraveling, what's truly beautiful, what's come out of all of this is that I feel like it's brought me closer to my family. I'm closer to my kids than I've ever been. I have a beautiful relationship with my mom. I remember thinking at this point in my life, there was a point in my life that I thought I might not ever be close to my parents. And I think I came to the point where I was starting to accept it. And what's interesting is that my mom was diagnosed with this condition called ataxia, which is like the back part of your brain is just shrinking at a more rapid rate. So that's the part that it controls your motor function skills, your ability to walk, use your hands, talk, even swallowing. So eventually she may be in a wheelchair, she may be tube fed. And, we've kind of battled that a little bit, and like just figuring out how do we navigate this elephant in the room. The beautiful thing that happened out of all of it, though, is I think it allowed my mom and I to really look at the life that we have here, how short it is. And it's not just the awareness of it, it's actually practicing that we can have a really beautiful time together while we have it. And I'm closer to her than I've ever been.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
As we were just bouncing back and forth on what we wanted to dive into together, the thing that you came up with that's happening for you, and you've already really touched on this, is this shift of like what's really important and where do we get our fuel from. And I have always known you as someone who is incredibly successful from and I don't mean to downplay the success in any way by saying this, but successful from how we usually define the sense of success, like profitable, great businesses, great relationships within the business world. And it seems like something has shifted. So do you want to give us a little insight, like what has shifted for you over these last little bit?
Yeah. I think after 27 years of entrepreneurship, I feel like that word has just been so dumped on. But I've been reflecting on something that I just never really expected. I achieved many of the things that I thought would make me feel successful, but then I realized success and fulfillment aren't the same thing. And if I were to sum up what the word success means, because I think you're right, we kind of associate success with financial acumen and the ability to navigate a business and to foster relationships. But I think if I were to just to sum up the word success, I would say, does it feel as good as it looks? Ooh,
that's a great question.
Yeah. And I think I I played the game for quite the while. And when I say game, is that there is, you know, we all learn at such an early age how to wear masks because we might get punished or in trouble for acting a certain way or doing something specific. We are put in these like confinements, these boxes that we're told like what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong. And I was such a high performer at such a young age. My mom, didn't intend to do any of that. She did the best she could, and she just passed on the resources that she knew what worked for her. And I think a lot of us we are looking for love through acceptance. And the highest way to receive that acceptance is through success. And when I chased these different, I'm going to call it the moving goalpost, chasing that goalpost every single time I would achieve something. And the problem is that I just wouldn't stop until I got it. Right. So it was just something I wanted to continue conquering. But really I didn't have it. It had me. It was so opposite. And it felt good until it didn't. And then when it didn't, I was like, what is, kind of going back to what I was saying, all this stuff that you're like accumulating. And it's just more things I had to answer to. It's more things I had to be responsible for. And it just started to become really heavy, and it was just breaking my back. And there was some shame associated with that. I felt a form of guilt because I have helped so many other young aspiring entrepreneurs or creative people, founders, achieve that level of success. And I think it was because I was focusing on perhaps the wrong thing. Now I think it deserves like a better question. Focusing on why you want it more so than what you want, because it's not hard to achieve something that you want. It's like you literally take these baby steps, or you just make the decision to do it. You just get off your butt and do it. And you keep doing it repeatedly, and you say no to everything else in your life until you actually conquer it. So it's not hard to get the thing done, but how are you going to feel about it is a completely different subject. So I think asking the bigger question of why do I want this? It started to develop enough cracks in order for me to really open up something that I've been really covering deep down inside, which was that feeling of not being enough. Like I just had this deep longing to feel like no matter what I did, that I was going to feel like I was enough. And that was never going to solve the problem. I mean, I made a lot of money and I acquired a lot of crap, and I still didn't feel like enough. If anything, the more things I acquired, the more money I made, the more things I had, the deeper that feeling of not enoughness happened, because it just felt so shallow, empty, hollow, and frustrating, because I kept thinking that if I get this or achieve this or get this title or get that award or whatever the thing was, that it would make me feel different. And sure enough, it didn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. And I would imagine that probably a lot of people listening can relate to this. Isn't necessarily the spoiler at this point. It's like, oh yeah, I've felt this. Like I know that same thing.
Yeah.
And as you were talking us through it, I had this visual in my head of like, there's this path that, whatever we believe in, whether it's spirit or source or whatever, God, whatever you call it, it has kind of a path for us. Life has a path for us. And instead, we choose this path of the pursuit of money, things, success, and however we define it. And that has a path to it. And kind of to your point, I think that the distance between where our soul knows we want to be, it actually gets greater the more that we kind of achieve certain aspects of life. I can reflect back on my own career, and at some points within my career that I think a lot of people would have been like, oh my gosh, you're at the pinnacle of your career. You know, you're making the most money, you have the highest position, you're on the biggest stages. those were also the part that I felt most distant from soul. You know, I was like drinking at night to get to sleep and then getting up. And you've already mentioned this a couple times, this sort of walking the walk instead of talking the talk. So, you know, I'd get done a huge hair show or something. We'd go out to the bar, drink till midnight. I would still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do meditation, do yoga, like all of these things to try to find my way back to this soul path that I kept feeling called to. And then I would leave the hotel room and walk the other direction further and further. And so it was almost like the process in the morning was more me like running back towards the path, and then I'd leave the hotel room and then take steps away from the path again. And so I did picture in my head almost this like, yeah, the success, because it's not a parallel path to the sort of soul path.
Yeah.
It's getting further and further and further. And I think a lot of people hit this place of being at kind of a very, quote, high point within career, but feeling the lowest when it comes to kind of like spirit, soul. Was there something specific that happened for you, or is it like something that built up over time and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, I've been ignoring this for too long?
You know that expression, death by a thousand cuts?
Yes.
I think it was that. It was like little things in time that started to accrue. And I think the voice started to become so loud that I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And there was a point that I just started to feel almost like an imposter in a way, that I was I wasn't living my truth. I wasn't being true to myself, that I felt like I was being someone else, like a version of myself. Like I was almost acting this character out.
Okay.
And the more I spent time with that character that didn't feel like who I truly am, the more I started to kind of resent parts of myself in a way. And when I saw that, and I started to recognize that I was the person who was curating this, then I knew I had to make different decisions. So, you know, I had a hard time with boundaries. So I created this little game. I really like to gamify things in life, like even like pairing up socks when you're doing laundry. I would try to find like the perfect couple and match them, and they would get married. Like that was something I did when I was a kid. And coming up with fun games that I would do with my kids, not just like a board game, but we would do like lights out nights where we weren't allowed to use any electricity, and we would only do things by candlelight.
Oh, cool. That'd be fun. Yeah.
It was some of the best.
I want to do that now.
Yeah, it was some of my favorite experiences. So, I mean, they didn't know that their mom was broke, and I was just trying to come up with fun, creative things that we could do that cost no money. It was great. 3 candles is all it cost. So, but anyway, yeah, gamify. And I created this game for myself that I call it the 5% method. And it's interesting because the 5% method, I started to apply in various parts of my life. I started to even ask myself, like, what would a 5% return on this be? What would a 5% shift in this be? And obviously you can't really calculate it that way when it comes to measures of your energy. But if I were to do something that were, instead of giving myself a list of 8 things to do and then beating myself up because I only get 7 of them done and not the 8th, it was more like shaving it down and just asking myself, of all of these things that I'm doing that I want to get done today, what do I truly want to do? And then what do I need to do? And then everything else, if I just have a little bit more energy for something else, then what's a 5% shift I could do for that? Yeah. So when I started applying that method or whatever, I started to create more fun time for myself and more time for I guess, ruminating. I mean, you and I were talking about this also before you started recording, but I do think there's such a thing as over rumination, which I've definitely got myself into as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti success. Like I love that. I love building businesses. I love growth. I love creating value. I mean, that's how we can all bond together with other people. But I think that I've learned that success is more of a tool and not identity. So once I started gamifying some of the tasks in a way, I was able to not be so hard on myself, I suppose. So in some ways, it's like finding your like childlike wander again, and just letting her play a little bit more.
Yeah, that is definitely something I have to work on a regular basis. Like I actually have these avatars that I go to within my life, and even aspects of myself, like facets within myself that I come back to refine that space. Because one of the things that you and I do share that we did talk about before we jumped on is we have really powerful brains. Like we are really, really good about thinking something through and analyzing it and making it clear, which is a huge strength of ours too, right, Ambrosia? I mean, you and I can sit down and we will pull things apart. And I would bet, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I bet that you get this comment too, because I know that you facilitate workshops and all that kind of stuff. I always got the feedback that I made things that usually felt hard, easy to understand. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the benefits of like this very strong analytical, process-oriented mind that we both have.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there is a Achilles heel to everything. And that Achilles heel can be that once we start to do that process, it's really easy for it to snowball, just turn into this huge boulder tumbling down the mountainside, and we get caught up in it and kind of crushed in the way.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I come back to for myself is in Bill Plotkin's map. He has this map of our self, and the south facet of the self is the wild person. It's your kind of like a wild aspect, and I do believe all of us have part of this. And so it's really important for me to come back to that pretty often of what does the wild Andrew want to do with this? Like, what does he want to do? And it's like, oh, I want to go out in the forest and walk like I'm crazy, or like go just lay my whole body in the grass right now. Yeah. And it's important for me to refine that aspect of me, that facet of me pretty often. Because like you said, I can really get caught up in the analytical, the process oriented, and even something that you said a little bit ago as well. There's actually a pretty easy path, and I think especially for some of us, again, that have this strength of just getting the thing done. Like, it's very process oriented. Like, you and I can look at something and pull it apart, and you're like, just do this, then do this, then do this, and this, and you will get to where you want to go. And that's the very process, like, oh, that part's easy. But all of like the subtle things that exist underneath, that can be the part that gets really elusive sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm not immune to that either. I hope it doesn't come across that way. It's not as if I don't overprocess things sometimes or overthink. I always think like no butts, no coconuts. Like don't try to let all of that crap get in the way. Just get the thing done. And usually when you get the thing done, you're like, that really wasn't that hard. It actually didn't take that long. And now I have just yet a little bit more information to go off of. Even if it doesn't go out the way you thought it would, it gives you just a little bit more information for the next time you may do it. So, And although, like, when you ask the question, like, did something big happen in your life, or were they all the small things? I think the biggest shifts that happen are not like a moment, at least in my experience. I'm sure some people have had really big shifts that happen, like, you know, the loss of someone that they love, or an illness or something like that. But I think just at least recognizing that the way you have seen things is we're constantly changing and shifting, and we're being remade and reborn all the time. And the more I attach myself to my old identity, the harder it is to let go of that identity. And I'm even still facing that today. I still attach my worth to my work. And that's a hard thing to admit when I have others coming to me asking for support or help or guidance, you know? So I can get in my own way with that process too. But if there's something that I really truly want to understand about practicing consciousness a little bit more, is just a simple thought, that awareness of being aware. Yeah. And if I practice that, then I get to be a lot less confrontational over having achieved something. And it's more that I'm just a human who's living a real experience that we all share together. And I'm not perfect. And this is not something that I've accomplished or conquered. It is something that I live and breathe. And it's totally normal. And if you aren't, then that is creepy AF. Like, yeah. who has ever accomplished that? There's no such thing as conquering yourself. We're constantly shifting, evolving, and changing. And what a beautiful thing. It's also beautiful to do a really wonderful send-off and just say, I did that. And now it's time to rediscover, and it's time to reignite this passion again, and see how I can continue to evolve through it. And although I'm in that process today, it doesn't just feel like the right thing to do. It feels like more harmonious with what I suppose my soul is asking of me. Yeah. So without putting the mask on, without looking for the ROI. So, because that part can be a little soul sucking if we're just focusing on measurements that are outside of us. And even though those outside measures can be slippery, and they're very tricky in the way that they can almost give us the same feeling, a similar feeling, I suppose, as what like a whole body experience could be, maybe like the dopamine hits that we would get from like something going viral on social media, or landing the contract that is like pays you the highest you've ever gotten paid, something like that, it's really easy for that to hijack. And, you know, it's not as if I'm immune to it if it happens again. It's just a reminder to me that I don't need to be hard on myself if that were to ever step foot in my hemisphere again. It's just that, oh yeah, it's a reminder once again that I want to make sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons, which goes back to why is it that I want to do it, not that I'm going to do it or I want to do it because someone wants me. Because then that's still going back to the not enoughness again. So I just have to have those moments to remind myself. And I think before BC, when no, like maybe in my younger years, like I would even go as far as to say like 4 or 5 years ago, if I was asked to do something, it was always an emphatic yes. And I truly meant it at the time. I would always say yes. And it was because I really was excited about it. But, but now I have to actually pause for a moment, and I really actually have to think on it now. And so it might not come as naturally to me because I still feel that little voice inside. The first inclination is yes, absolutely. So if it's not a fuck yes, then it is definitely, I have to pause for a moment. And I'm like, wait a minute, it wasn't that emphatic. And so now I have to take a pause And usually the pause is the no, but I feel so uncomfortable with saying it, because it's fulfilling all the other things that have filled that hole. And now as I pull things out of it, this empty vessel that I'm trying to figure out how to give love and attention to, it's so easy to stuff things back in there again. So
yes.
I'm trying to notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something I read one time that said something to the effect of like, we either consciously choose our motivation or it will choose us. And
yeah.
I think that was something that I think most of us, hopefully those of you that are listening, this is something you can relate to because it seems very human to find ourselves motivated by things that we didn't necessarily specifically choose. Like, I don't know that I specifically ever sat down and really pulled it all apart and said, you know, I'm going to be motivated by getting my insecurity fulfilled by stepping on stage and having hundreds and hundreds of people applaud.
Yeah.
I didn't consciously choose that, yet that was definitely a very strong motivator in the early part of my career. And by the way, I don't judge that motivation. I'm not saying that was a terrible thing that I did, or I should have never felt that way. I just can reflect back and I'm like, I didn't consciously choose those things.
Right.
So if you look back at, like you said, even like 5 years ago or so, what do you think was the motivation back then?
The motivation back then was being needed by other people. That's all it was. I just wanted to be wanted. And there's an insatiable appetite there, because as soon as you are needed / wanted, or whatever you want to call it, by someone else, then you're kind of like, in some ways, my visual of it was opening up this wound, and like it was just there for the taking. Mm-hmm. And I think, just hearing what you said just a moment ago, like I identify with that, because I do think that success is a terrible place to look for completion. And I think it's the closest thing to what feels complete. So that's where it can be a little tricky, that success can solve some problems, but it doesn't necessarily tell you who you are. Mm-hmm. And if I look at myself 5 years ago, when I was getting all of these amazing opportunities to do things, I wasn't asking myself, how is this getting me closer to what I'm truly designed to do, what I'm actually here for? It was more, well, this is the natural succession plan. This is what people tell you success is. This is what, so I've done. It's like you look at things in this very linear way, because that's kind of where a success defined path is. But I think we're all non-linear thinkers, really. It's it's like a tornado in here, actually. There's a bit of a spiral going on here, if you will, Andrew. So I think when you remove that mask of perfectionism, and that was something that was like so beautifully placed together for me in front of me, because I was raised by a woman who, she was taught, well, this is her belief at least. Her belief was that you have to be an exceptional woman in order to make up for an ordinary man. And so she was in an industry she was in the tech industry. She worked at Intel, and she was so in her masculine that there was no time for her to be soft and feminine. Not to say that feminine is only soft. I'm just, I don't want to step on any toes with that. What I mean is that she was in such do mode that she wasn't giving herself any grace. She didn't find any place to find acceptance within herself. And because that was her success, and she was able to do some amazing things at Intel, she was able to like really push through some barriers that a lot of people thought she wasn't going to be able to achieve.
Yeah.
That pinnacle of success really gobbled her up. And some crazy things kind of happened after she retired. Her health went south, which happens to a lot of people. And she had no idea who the hell she was. All the while, like, she and I just really didn't have a chance to get to know one another, because our way of connecting was, she was trying to build up this superhuman. She was like, she had me in Girl Scouts until I was in high school, for crying out loud. It was so embarrassing. I was like, she's trying to like make me into this thing that she wasn't able to do. And in some ways, you know, I don't fault her for it, but, you know, I think part of my, my course of life, like looking back on the things that happened that was being shaped into this perfectionist mentality, she was just trying to find a way to bond with me back then. All the while, I thought she was trying to control me, but that was her way of being able to bond with me. So she did the best she could, and that's all she knew how to do with it. And I don't think it really was until, in some weird ways, that her illness, it kind of forced her to soften and to really look at herself. And then I think that's when that feminine energy was able to pour out of her. And I think in a lot of ways, at the same time, simultaneously, I'm going through this, like, I'm being dramatic right now. I call it an existential crisis, but it definitely is not. I mean, there's no crisis going on here, but it's more that if I look at all the things that I have done up until now, it's like this, I was just living in this body that was just doing all these things, but it wasn't, I was nowhere near figuring out who I am as a person. So that's where my journey is now. So in some ways, like, I think in that 5-year period, that's when that rebirthing really started to take place, or really shape in. And that's where I am now. And I think that's the reason why in some ways, I feel a little like I'm living double lives. I feel a little split. You know, when people say the word balance, I don't know if I really believe in balance. I mean, I'm trying to figure out more harmony, I suppose, but there's still the me that gets up and does the things, and I work really hard, and I'm trying to figure ways out to achieve something in a shorter period of time, so that I'm not wasting time, because time is such an important commodity that I think we have taken for granted when we were younger. And I wish I could instill these values in people that are younger than us, but unfortunately, I do think it's a rite of passage that you just kind of have to go through it to figure it out.
Yeah.
What I do enjoy, though, is that all of us, like Gen Xers and millennials, like, I think that these generations now are being a lot more transparent about it. And hopefully in some ways that puts some faults or cracks in the system, that people believe that if they get this, then something magical will happen, when really this is part of life. Like, life is suffering, and we're going to go through this in many different forms and shapes. And learning to really love yourself and not attach yourself to the things that you do, but rather live your life, and the things that you do within that life will just naturally Unfold. Well, what a wonderful way to live it. I mean, that just feels better altogether. So, and hopefully that's what people who are possibly, who are younger or just experiencing these beginning phases of this, they can hear that, and they realize, like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this, and this is not something that is just, you know, subject to me. And this is just a human quality or trait. And if I make a better relationship with that, then I might not cause, like, unwarranted suffering in order to fulfill something that was never meant to be filled in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a tough, it's such a tough thing to wrap our heads around, this concept of, like, how much of that suffering had to be there. Because to your point, I also believe that so much of what we go through is there for us. It's part of the maturation process. And, like, my soul, my spirit, my consciousness isn't going to continue to mature and to move towards that higher state of consciousness if it doesn't get to go through all of these experiences here in this human world to get to that place. Like if it was meant to be that, the elders would just basically hand down the wisdom and the younger people didn't have to go through all the experiences, we would probably see that somewhere in the world, but we don't see that. Even in very traditional indigenous societies, like we see the children go through hardship. And in fact, it's kind of part of the process. Like they're still going through true rites of initiation, which are usually pretty intense, painful, and so I can't help believe that these things that we all get to go through within our existence, within our time here, are part of that process for us. It's part of that initiation and that growth process. I know that I don't want to kind of like restate a question I've already asked, because, I already asked, like, was there a place that things started to shift? But the thing that feels apparent to me, just based on what you've been sharing with me so far, sharing with us, is there has been a shift, though, with what these motivations and maybe needs and wants were just 5 years ago. So how have you found yourself to where you're at now, where the needs, the wants, the motivations are different? And I guess before I completely release that question, I do want to honor the fact that you are recognizing that part of you that was maybe hyper motivated in the past to achieve and to have success, that it still lives within you. Because I still think, I think that that's a really important part too, is to recognize we don't have to destroy the previous version. We just have to recognize where it became so far out of alignment. And then I love that you also brought that distinction between balance and harmony, because that's something I really look at for myself too. Balance seems so rigid. Like, oh, well, here are the 8 pieces of pie of human life, and all 8 should, be in perfect balance with each other. And that is definitely not how life works, at least in my experience. So I also prefer that term harmony, because harmony to me feels fluid. I can have a portion of my life that was maybe a little too far out of harmony towards like business and success and finances. That doesn't mean I have to like shut that part off of me. It means, can I find harmony within the other aspects so that this aspect also gets to be healthy? So I wanted to just recognize those pieces that you brought in. But to come back to the question, like, how did you find yourself here? How did you find yourself now looking at things with different motivation, different perspective?
Well, although there were several smaller things that I was being reminded of about just kind of who I'm becoming, who I have been, what got me here, I think I reached a point where I felt as though I wasn't learning as much as I was teaching, not even close. And I started to feel that hunger within me to rediscover, to learn something new. So that was probably one kind of a major break, I suppose, in what I was longing for. But the second thing that happened that was a pretty big shift is I had a business partner with a salon space for 10 years. We were incredibly successful. And when I say incredibly successful, it was, we kind of just blew goals out of the water, and we had so many people that wanted to work for us that I had to go through group interviews, and it was a wonderful experience while it lasted. However, I I realized that there were some really fundamental things, I think, on a moral code, ethical code, that I just wasn't aligned with my business partner. And I was really confronted with it. And for a while, I did nothing. I just kept going through order of business, knowing in the back of my mind that I don't know if I can be here anymore. It was that strong.
Well,
And that's a hard thing to face when you are having to look at a challenge of something that you built up and you're like, gosh, I've got this like $1 million business and everything's going great. And like, I was so close to not working behind the chair anymore. I was working on my education thing. I was really jiving with it and I was feeling good. All the while I was like, I don't know if I can be associated with this anymore. It just didn't feel right for me. And so I had to make a decision, and it was a hard thing to do because the easy thing would have been to just keep going with it. It would have been so easy, but I just wouldn't have felt good about myself. And I think that was probably the part that I was suffocating that voice. It was quieting that voice. That was what was happening over the course of several years. And so even though I could say, yes, it was all these different little cuts here and there, that was the biggest slice of all. I mean, that one really cut deep. And when that happened, I think I started to look at all the relationships in my life. I started to really take stock of the relationships in my life. And some of the most important relationships, which would be probably family or the closest friends, the people that you surround yourselves by, I started to ask questions like, am I judging this person where they are in their life? Do I harbor resentment or bad feelings towards this person? And one person could be like my brother, for instance. He and I have not been on speaking terms for quite some time. He's been battling just life stuff, addiction, things like that. And I really pulled away from him, and he was somebody that was very close to. And I didn't like what I saw who he was becoming. So I just really pulled away from him. My dad would be another person. So I started to realize all these little like fractures in relationships. And instead of me thinking to myself, this is how they are, this is what they're doing with their life, I'm just going to hold them away, I started to look at myself instead. Like, what am I doing to contribute to the fractures in this relationships? What am I thinking that holds ill will toward that person? What kind of negative energy am I putting out into the atmosphere? What negative energy am I holding onto that could be causing like this disease within me? So when I started to have a different relationship with my business partner, my brother, my dad, all these things, and really kind of stepped into how can I forgive this, and how can I also forgive myself, and how can I not want to hold on to that anymore and truly just set it free and apologize to that person for being angry toward them for so long and blaming them for where I am in my life or how I feel. Taking true accountability. That was the whole walking the walk. And when that started happening, it's like you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I mean, you can't undo it. You can't unsee it. So it just makes you want to live your life a little differently. And I mean, luckily for me, because I was such a hustler when I was younger, and I still am, like, the hustler, she's still there, but it's in a different way now. And instead of trying to acquire more things, it's more like, how can I pass the torch on? How can I leave room for more curiosity, reinvesting my assets, and how can I live off of less and invest more? And I'm really excited about this, and I haven't really talked much about this in public, so to speak, but I will talk about it more. I shared with you I'm in the process of writing a book, and it's probably going to be a year-long exploration if I do it the right way, and I really want to do it right. I want to be really proud of this work, and I want to pass this to my daughter. I want to give it all to the younger women that have, been a part of my life to help mold and shape me and who I am. We always think about our elders, but there are a lot of people that are younger around me that really inspire me to live life a little differently. It's been really a beautiful thing. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent right now, Andrew.
That's okay. Yeah, you're allowed.
Sorry. But yeah, going back to this thought of, I'm really excited about not having work define me as much anymore and having less things. I just have a really strong desire to not be responsible for things anymore. And I think it's kind of funny. Okay, so I was talking to my financial advisor. Like, I'm sorry, I'm totally changing the subject. Like, this is how my brain works. I was talking to I was talking to my financial advisor like a month ago, and she said to me, she's like, "Well, what do you want your legacy to be?" And I started cracking up. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I probably sound like an asshole right now." I was just like, I just think the word legacy is so ick. It just like, it's such a weird thing to think about. Like, what an egotistical thing for us to think that, like, oh, my legacy. Like, I will be lucky if my grandkids remember me. You know what I mean? It's just like, we're just here for such a short time. And like the thought of ownership is also such a funny concept too, because it's like, we don't really own anything. We're just like acquiring these things that we are signing ourselves up to take care of something, and we call ourselves an owner. But I don't know, in some ways it owns us. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take me away from wanting to have ownership. I mean, I own a home right now, and I own a business right now, and there's something in me that is tugging where I'm like, what would it be like to not have any of these things to take care of, and to be like truly nomadic and to rediscover the world through a different set of eyes, I suppose, or, explore my love for human connection, travel, building businesses, and doing it in a slightly different way. And my one little step out of it was, newsflash, I did get out of my old business partnership. I parted ways with my older business partner on the best terms we possibly could have, in my opinion. I feel really proud of that. It could have been ugly. I mean, and I feel good about that. Like, I think it just needed to happen. It was long overdue. And luckily within that, I actually made some money out of it. And that was like, okay, that's a win. That's great. So now I'm re-exploring what this business model, if I were to do something slightly different, what would that be like? So now I'm just like, I'm trying to really apply that, what I was calling the 5% method. I'm really trying to apply that in different aspects of my life where I don't get so attached to the way things were. Because I do find that coming up when I talk to a lot of people. It used to be this way. It was this way. Well, I used to. And it's like, yeah, and that's really beautiful. And now you can take that information and you can kind of reimagine it into what you want today. And how can you combat this as if it's a new problem to solve? Because it is. It's like, we say that life gives you lessons and it's like a historical thing and that you go off of history, but it's not really that way. It's not history. It's more... it's a rhyming. It's like history as a way of rhyming, so it's not as if you can apply the exact same principles that you learned and then you could just apply it to the next thing. It's that it might remind you of something, but in slightly different context, I suppose. So yeah, I have about a year and a half left of this lease on the salon, and I'm going to continue to keep shifting and experimenting, I'm going to call it. I'm working with a brand new stylist. It's fresh out of beauty school. And they decided to take the leap in being independent, which is like, we've always said in the industry, that's a big no-no. You can't do that. But I was like, well, is that true? If I were willing to give mentorship to this person and I can nurture them and I know how to do this and I've been running an apprenticeship for so many years, what if I could help this person get to this point without them having to, work under the guidance of somebody else and be an employee? So that was like step one. And I've done it several times now that I'm like, okay, I've got this container like packaged in a really great way that can help this person grow to this level in a shorter period of time. And that's been really fun to help them nurture their business and watch that grow and happen. And then the next step is, like I mentioned, my financial advisor. My husband and I are wanting to explore the world and travel. And so we're talking about selling our house. I've been squirreling away for a long time. We've been investing for quite a while, enough to the point that we have more than enough. And I think that's part of the problem, that hedonic treadmill. It's just like we just keep going and going, and like our new benchmark, it's like it just keeps rising, and that fear can really keep us stuck in this like quote unquote matrix. And at some point you have to decide, this is enough. So I'm ready for that part of my life, and I'm excited, nervous. I'm nervous and excited, nervous-sided about it. But I just think that it feels like such a beautiful time to complete one chapter and experiment with it. Like, how can I give my time back in different ways instead of the time for money exchange? Like, what would happen if transactional relationships were to shift a little bit more? There's so much that we can do. And I want to be able to live life fully that way. And I think sometimes when we create these traps within our business, we think to ourselves, this is my identity and everyone's watching me. Well, guess what? Nobody's watching you. Nobody gives a shit. They're all worried about themselves. So, and if they are watching you, it's for a very short period of time. So it's like, at some point you have to decide for yourself to do something bold and brave just because it scares you, but also excites you all at the same time, and trust that you're going to be okay. There's also one last thing that I feel like is I feel comfortable enough with sharing with you. And I would imagine that anyone in your hemisphere has either been there or knows it well. But I do think that I can't say it's the 1,000 cuts. I can't say that it was like these moments in my history that has changed everything. I do think I could probably attribute to psilocybin. Like I did a hero's dose at a center with a guide. And at first I was like, well, that was a waste of money. That didn't do anything. I didn't have any aha moments. I saw my ancestors. That was pretty cool. And there were some trippy things that happened within that period of time. I saw time get compressed. I did see past, present, future all at the same time. So that was really cool. But I think it was all the stuff that happened afterward. And that's what my guide was telling me. She said, really pay attention to what comes up for you, how you handle things differently. I noticed that I didn't have as much anxiety running on in the background, that I didn't feel the need or the pull that I have to get this done. I've created all these crazy non-negotiables around the way I thought things were supposed to happen. And that's just like, talk about suffering. I mean, that is self-induced suffering.
Oh yeah.
And I also think that when we create stories for ourselves because we have to feel okay with the way things are, or that we have to make excuses or whatever the thing is, that if we rely only on our memory of stories, then that's another way of creating suffering. Like sometimes if we just shift our perspective in what eyes we're looking through the story, then we realize the story can change. And we're like, oh my gosh, which is what I was telling you in the very beginning about my mom when we first started talking, that I was looking at my mom through the lens of, she was trying to make me into this Terminator superhero human, when in fact, all she was trying to do was relate to me and bond with me. And that was the only way she knew how. Right. So a shift in perspective, it can really change the whole freaking story. So yeah, we can kind of create our own fun little stories in our life to shape where we're going and where we want to be, who we want to be. And I think that's a part about life that I'm most excited about living is sometimes when we look at the diseases in our lives, whether it's a toxic relationship or a thought process or truly getting sick, it's just the fact that we're running into something that causes so much dis-ease that we have to do something differently in order to feel different. And then it's like, oh my God, it's so much, it's crazy how like we can lift a veil just by that thought, that shift in perspective. So,
Yeah.
So I guess it was a big thing. It was a death by 1,000 cuts, and then it was a final slice.
Yeah. And I think that that's often the truth of it is I think it often feels like a big cut, like some huge sword came around and just chopped our head right off. I think often if we take a step back and really look at what happened leading up to that moment, it goes more to that saying of things happen slowly than they hadn't happened suddenly. And
Yeah.
I've really seen that pattern within myself, the people that I work with, they'll have these sudden experiences. And that's often the thing that is the catalyst for them to start, quote, the work of some sort.
Mhm.
But as we start to pull that apart, we can look back and go, oh, holy shit, this started with, just like my friend Trevor talked about in the last podcast, birth trauma was the first cut. Like he is able to trace back something that he is still experiencing today in his 50s as something that he experienced first through the birthing process. First cut.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I think it's often that big experiences do trigger like the shift in direction or like the true seeking of the next direction. But I think often if we pull the pages back, it's like, oh my gosh, here's this point in my story. Here's this point in my story. And they start to line up and we do see those 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's like it's having those thought processes as much as it can feel painful in the moment. It's kind of ironic how it is the thing that creates like a path of freedom in some ways, or just feels like a sigh of relief because it's not at all what defines you, which is why I think I've been addicted to reading all these spiritual books in a way. It's just that it is a thought and it doesn't belong to you. There was a there was a neuroscientist I was listening to who I really like how he worded things. And I think about this to this day. Whenever I have a thought that comes up and I would attach that thought to me, instead, you assign the thought to a different person outside of you. It could be a shadow. It could be a twin of you. It could be like the mirror. It could be your alter ego, or something that you imagine, like somebody that you imagine. But you just attach the thought to that person. And if that person were to say to you the thought that you're thinking, then you'd be like, fuck you, shut up. That's rude. And I think in some ways that lets you be a little bit playful with it too. It lets you use your imagination in a really great way. It's hard to do in the beginning, but I think in a lot of ways it created another like path of freedom for me because it was truly just a temporary thought, and then it left, and then another thought came up, and it didn't ruin like 3 hours of my day or half my day or whatever. And it just lets you play more. It lets you enjoy more things. And I don't think the prisons that we create for ourselves are the external prisons that we create for ourselves are really the problem. It's more the internal prisons of the thought. So I think if we don't associate ourselves with the thought and we just are able to like be better about assigning that thought to an external person, and it's helped me. And I thought, what a simple practice that is so easy to come back to. So, and I use that very process today. And it's really helped me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great tool. So I know that we've kind of established in our conversation that we do believe that probably the things that we've gone through in life, even as a younger person, maybe they all had to happen so that we could get to the place that we are today. Maybe it's all in divine timing. Who knows for sure, right?
Yeah.
So here's the last question for you. Okay. And I love that you even said like Terminator, because like I kind of think about, sci-fi movies like Terminator. If you could literally like transport back, and you could go in with like some weird kind of sci-fi surgical tool and like scoop some part of younger Ambrosia's brain out. Like if you could just be like, yep, I can just disconnect that circuit right now. What would it be? What would you go back and just be like, okay, there's one thing I can just totally disconnect and first, where in the history would you do it? Yeah. And then what would it be?
Well, I became a teen mom when I was 18 years old. I had my son. Mm-hmm. And I this is kind of the evolution, I suppose, of the story, and this is why writing this book even came to fruition. So I started to realize that the stories that I created in my mind, my memories, were not exactly solidified. They were more fluid. And as I gained more information and perspective in my life, I've been able to create a different relationship with those stories, and it actually shifted the story. And within those pieces, there were lessons that I realized kept coming up for me. And I do think sometimes if you don't, you will continue to learn the same lesson in life until you do something differently. And there was one particular lesson, and I think I've said it in the beginning, I've said it actually multiple times, which is that feeling of not enoughness. Mm. I think it's a very common quality that a lot of us humans have.
Yes.
And I don't think it's something that was taught necessarily. I think it's just like a place of belonging. We're just looking for that place of belonging. I looked at people's expressions. I looked for the evidence that I had already told myself that I wasn't capable and that I'm doing it in the wrong order. And because of that, I cemented this thought that I wasn't enough. So if I could go back to a part of my life, it would be when I was 18 and I gave birth to my son. And I wouldn't let that be so cemented or solidified. I would have had more grace for myself, and I would have said, this is happening for me as an opportunity that I get to learn so much about myself and life, and this is a gift. And because if I look back on it now, like my son, wrong, right, or indifferent, he taught me a lot about myself. We have a really cool relationship now, to the point that he even calls me a friend. It's cool. Like, I don't feel like so much where we have a relationship where I'm mom, although I am. I mean, he calls me for advice all the time, especially if it's like financial stuff, but we get to have really beautiful, long conversations. We get to like talk about, well, anything really. It's kind of nice. And I can be as open and vulnerable and transparent with him as he is able to be with me. And we are able to feed off of one another, because that is the relationship that we got to develop over time, because I truly grew up with him, and he taught me a lot about life. It's just very fascinating, which is like why I was saying to you, like there's a lot of young people I've got people that are working in my salon right now that are like young, they're less than half my age, for crying out loud. And I feel like we're the same age, because I do think that we're all like kids, we're children, we haven't fully grown up. I mean, that's like I think it's such a disservice we do for ourselves, that we wear this mask that we just think that we have to kind of like keep up with this persona, that we have it all figured out and that we have to have it all together. So yeah, going back to your question, I just think that if I could have instilled that in myself, which would be difficult to say that right now, because I don't know that I have fully healed that, but the feeling of not enoughness, it comes up quite often. And I do realize that it's just a thought. And yes, I still put it with this other shadowy person that sits next to me. And then I look at them and I'm just like, go fuck yourself. But I still realize that thought comes up for me. I just wish I didn't get so attached to that thought that it made it a reality, because all I wanted to do was prove people wrong. Yeah. I wanted to prove myself. And that just became like the biggest insatiable appetite ever. And it was like, no matter what I did, it just never felt like enough. I found, moments of jealousy coming up often, envy. I was comparing myself to my performance over other people. I was super competitive with myself. I had to outdo my previous self all the time. If I wasn't growing, like I always associated growth with numbers and achievements. And although in their own right, they have created a path of freedom for where I am today. So what a weird intersection to fall into, because I can't say that I regret any of that stuff. I just wish that I could go back to that moment in time and feel like I was enough, because I just think that I could have lived a little bit more harmoniously as a young mom and had more grace with myself, and also not so much learn through my son, what a lot of pressure to put on a child. Mm-hmm. So I think in our earlier years, there's been a lot of conversation that's come up now, even where, he's now talking about having children. He's like, I want to have children young like you did. And it's like, well, that's all relative. Like, slow your roll here. So, like, you have a lot of time. But with that said, I am able to, give him little nuggets of wisdom, and hopefully he listens to it. And I even tell him, like, buddy, you're just never going to have it figured out. There's never a perfect time, but just try to make sure that you realize that you're raising someone, they're in your care, but you don't get to really have much say so in how you mold and shape them. You just have to hold them and create a space for them. And that's about it. It's almost like somebody actually used this analogy. This is not something I made up, but it's like when you're bowling, you just put the guardrails up or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's it. You're just trying to get the ball from going in the gutter, but they get to be the ball and decide how many pins they're going to roll over. The rest of it, you just don't really have control over. And I think if I were to have that feeling of like, I am enough, I don't need to do more, I don't need to have more, I don't need to prove anything, I do think that I could have just enjoyed that part of my life a lot more instead of trying to outdo or outpace myself. To what end? Yeah.
I'm 100% sure there's lots and lots of people listening to you right now, like shaking their head up and down. Yes, hearing every word. And, something that I've always really seen within you, that it was something that I really admired within you, was this level of commitment that you have to things. Like, you set your vision on something and you get very, very committed to it. I also love watching this thing that's been really happening even since some of our early conversations, where now there's this shift where yes, there's still a level of commitment, but also questioning. Like, is that true? Do I want to stay committed to this? Is this really how I want it to be? And I really love watching this part of you unfold, Ambrosia, as you continue to question these things, and without necessarily letting go of the commitments that you do have to yourself, like finding the harmony, like you said, of both, and just so grateful that I get to be someone to watch all of that unfold over the past couple years. And I really appreciate you taking time to be with us and sharing so vulnerably. You shared a lot today that is quite tender, quite personal, and I'm just so grateful that you spent time with us and were willing to go there.
Thank you, Andrew. Anytime, honestly. Sometimes we just need to talk it out.
Yes.
So, and also what a fun thing to be able to share experiences with other people, especially when they can relate to it so well. Mm-hmm. That's probably what's kept me serving clients for so many years behind the chair, I'm still taking care of some clients, and I'm going to have to break the news to them soon that we're going to do a little bit of a countdown. Not to say it will be forever, but it's just going to look a little different. So I'm going to test out little mini sabbaticals and see what that would look like. And, but yeah, going back to those relationships, I think that's why I've held on to those relationships for so long. It's because, we get to relate on so many wonderful, beautiful levels. And I have been able to learn so much through my clients about myself even. So I think if you listen enough and you are committed to it, then life has a really beautiful way of chiseling out those moments for you. I witnessed so many people that are so close to seeing an upswing, like a change, and then they give up on themselves or they give up on the project too quickly. And I've also seen the opposite happen. And I think, it's maybe doing it for the right reasons is probably part of the reason why it works so well for some. And for those who aren't doing it for the right reasons, like accolades, money, that sort of thing, achievement, then that's when it can feel really hollow. And that's also where you can start resenting it or maybe giving up on it. So you don't have to burn everything to the ground, but there are other ways, I think, of ending something in a poetic way, in a way that you can still love it and let it go, or think the time and not abandon. So I think that's a big thing for me. So it just kind of goes back to that moral code for me. And those who I've talked to that have done that type of work with themselves, and they really ask themselves, like, how do I feel about this morally or ethically? And if you kind of follow those codes, then I think it just is a lot more fulfilling, even if you hate it in the moment and you just want to rip it apart and throw it away. If you just go back to that, then you're like, no, this is what I'm doing it. I don't like it right now. Like, there have been times, and I will openly admit this, I have 2 kids, and there have been many times where I'm like, I love you, but I do not like you right now. Yeah. And that's okay. You can do that. And it's the same for business, the same for all relationships. There can be moments that you just don't like it, but you can still love it.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us. Lots and lots in here to just digest and sit with. So super grateful for you, Ambrosia.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.